African context has been we've been reaching a slowdown now after a decade of high growth, but also globally, the emerging market boom, it also seems to have slowed down also. And then BRICS, that used to be, it was a couple of years ago, there was a lot of excitement around BRICS. A couple of the BRICS economies, politically and economically, are struggling. We see political and economic problems in Brazil. South Africa, we've got slow growth, political issues, and so on. China has been trying to restructure that economy, and grows a slowdown. And India, and just why we're so lucky to have Mr. Sami here, seems to be bucking the trend.
Asia and Africa together have 5.6 billion people. That's close to 76% population of planet Earth. I come from a country, 1.28 billion people, median age is 24. Both in Africa and Asia, we have aspirational societies where people, especially the young, who are stakeholders in the future. Intra-regional trade in Africa is at 11%, if I'm correct, which is very low. In Asia, it's 50%. In Europe, it's 70%. As a solution for future, look at within Africa and connecting Africa and Asia. If you don't create those opportunities, this dividend can become a big challenge for societies. Africa has 900 million hectares of arable land. Africa can be the breadbasket. Food inventories are perhaps at alarmingly low levels. But China and India are self-sufficient when it comes to food production. The previous decade, between 2004 and 2014, India tripled its national income, quadrupled its GDP. We brought out 140 million people, as per the World Bank, out of the poverty net. But hunger, even today, kills more people than all the pandemics put together. Health security is important for all the people, but particularly the vulnerable, the deprived sections, the weaker sections. That's where Africa, Asia, India need a partnership. In the spirit of South-South cooperation. South Africa, your share of manufacturing in the GDP is less than 14%. India has only 16% share of manufacturing in the GDP. This is again where we need to work together. You cannot have prosperity, growth, or address economic crisis or crisis in financial markets as long as peace is threatened. All have suffered waves of terror attacks. Resources and attention and minds of the leadership of the world, leadership of the countries will remain focused on this. You can have welfare of the people, progress, job creation, only when these issues get addressed. The multilateral institutions, which must reflect the contemporary realities and must not remain imprisoned. I'm talking of United Nations Security Council, of Bretton Woods institutions, the IMF and the World Bank. They have to change.
Within the African Union, we need to really adopt an industrial policy, which is pivotal. We all know that many countries, including Japan, South Korea, grew at a faster pace by ensuring that they protected what was theirs, and to try and develop capability in certain areas to leapfrog and be competitive with the rest of the world. And Africa has to do that. We've got 11% intra-Africa trade. What we're trying to do in Africa is to improve that. But that requires huge investment. The African Development Bank, one of its Achilles heel is the fact that it's not owned by Africans. The majority owners of the African Development Bank are US, Japan, and Europe. The development of the BRICS Bank is a huge move in trying to mobilize funding, strengthen manufacturing, and beneficiate those resources which at the moment are going to Asia, specifically to China really. We need to think seriously about engaging seriously the Bretton Woods institution to ensure that we transform that institution
the Bretton Woods institutions are actually also suffering from credibility, relevance, and also lack of ideas.
I want to start off by saying that the crisis in the Bretton Woods institution should be a moment of great joy for all of us. For half a century, we've been saying that this development model, the Washington Consensus, that's been forced down upon us doesn't work. It doesn't work for the majority of people on the earth, and it in particular doesn't work for women in the South. The challenge for us is what else we put into that space that's not only about rhetoric. In our own country, we've got a constitution that requires a government to engage us, to ask our opinions, to get our views on policies. We're shocked by the decisions that our governments make. Our leaders speak in abstract political rhetoric, but actually naming the economic system that is depriving us of dignity in our lives is not forthcoming.
Rating agencies who are not responsible to anybody except those who own them. A lot of investors and others respond to what the rating agencies say, and therefore what they do or don't do impacts upon our borrowing costs, can impact upon our economy. There are all of these things that rating agencies can. And I think they can be confronted and should be confronted.
My name is Norman Mampani from COSATU. Workers are facing retrenchment on a daily basis. We are aware that China experienced 6.8% in the last economic cycle, while South Africa didn't go even beyond 1%. What is that silver bullet that China is pressing, and us in South Africa were unable to press?
South Africa, particularly South Africa and Brazil specifically, is a crisis where your manufacturing sector is declining quite drastically because, firstly, old technology, embedded interest groups, both labor and capital, are partners in exploiting incentive from the state. So there's no new thinking at all. So workers are being paid very well. Bosses use the incentive to report high profits, and there's no growth. They're stalled in that trend. So South Africa and Brazil require a huge restructuring in terms of the relationship. The ANC government has got an NTP on the table, but what it's implementing is something very, very, very different. There's a lot of these issues that these governments that are caught in middle-income trap find themselves in. And until those serious decisions are taken, those countries remain there. In our case, there's a plan. Let's get on with the plan. There's a whole lot of knowledge that's embedded in South Africa, but South Africa has been bottled because it's thinking local, it's not thinking regional. It's an issue about how in countries that have got high levels of unemployment, where people are trapped, they'll never see a job in their lives because the insiders have shut up through these networks. In our case, the trade union movement, COSATU, Solidarity, FEDUSA, etc. They're trapped, they've got a close relationship with the state and business. They close in to maximize for themselves, but the rest of society remains outside in informal sector, etc. So it's all those things that middle-income countries have to think about, how they create that new dynamism. And it's a pain, it's a very painful thing.
We started off by discussing two themes. The first theme was innocently called Prospects for the Asia-Africa Relationship. And what we've heard is a rich catalogue of potential relationships. Cooperation on health and medicine, manufacturing, IT, energy, infrastructure, agriculture, even peace and security. The puzzle is, what is the institutional vehicle that will take us to deeper cooperation? Is it the old bilateral relationships, which our voice from civil society says is muted or closed? Is it BRICS? What about IPSA, which I didn't hear anybody speak about, the India, Brazil, South Africa relationship? If the Brazilians were here, we would have had that same conversation. It would have been more painful because there's a real crisis unfolding there, if not here in the next couple of months. What is this emerging global order that you saw in the title of the invitation? What caliber of leadership do we need that can drive a new vision of a global order?